Ever think about those industries that seem like they're just unstoppable? The ones you just assume are going to be around forever.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What if we told you that even those giants, even they can stumble?
Hmm. That's interesting thought.
Today, we're going deep on why that happens.
I like it.
And more importantly, how to avoid that pitfall.
Avoiding pitfalls, that's always a good thing.
Yeah, no kidding. So we're really diving into a classic today, Theodore Levitt's Marketing Myopia from the Harvard Business Review.
Oh, yeah, a foundational piece.
It is. And you know what? Even though it was written decades ago, the insights in this article are so powerful.
Absolutely still relevant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for understanding why some industries that seem like they should be unstoppable,
Right, totally.
they end up struggling or even disappearing.
It's amazing how much it applies even today.
It really is. So our mission for you today is to really get a grip on this essential difference
Okay, yeah.
between a mindset that's all about the product
The product focus.
versus one that's truly focused on the customer.
Customer-centric.
And to see how that difference shapes long-term success or decline.
Crucial distinction.
Absolutely, we'll be drawing on Levitt's original arguments,
Okay.
using his insights and some really compelling historical examples.
Sounds good. I'm ready to dive in.
All right, so Levitt kicks things off with this really striking statement. Every major industry was once a growth industry.
Let that sink in for a moment.
It's kind of hard to wrap your head around at first, right?
It does make you pause, yeah.
But then he hits you with the punchline. A lot of these former growth engines, they've either stalled out completely
Right.
or they're actually shrinking.
Yeah, that's the part that's really thought-provoking.
And here's where it gets really insightful for you.
Okay, I'm listening.
Levitt argues that the main reason for this decline isn't a saturated market.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just that there's no more room to grow?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
He says it's a failure of leadership,
Nice.
and specifically at the executive level.
Interesting. So it's a top-down problem.
It seems to be, yeah, and what's key here is his emphasis on overarching goals and strategies.
Makes sense.
Not just, the day-to-day operations.
Right, it's about the big picture thinking.
Exactly, the big picture thinking.
I'm curious what stood out to you most about this initial idea.
It really makes you think about any situation where people get comfortable, assuming that past successes are going to guarantee future results.
Yeah, that we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
Mentality.
It's like that old saying,
Oh, yeah.
if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
But sometimes things are broken and we don't even realize it.
Exactly. And that can be a really dangerous trap.
Definitely a recipe for complacency.
And you know what? Levitt illustrates this so brilliantly with some classic examples.
I'm eager to hear them.
Yeah. So let's start with the railroads.
Okay, a classic case study.
Yeah. So as Levitt explains, they define their business as being the railroad business,
Okay.
which is a very specific product.
Right, you've got the tracks, the trains, the whole infrastructure.
But the fundamental need wasn't really about trains themselves. It was about transportation,
Oh,
moving people and goods efficiently.
you're talking about a much broader category.
Exactly. And this is a key point for you.
Right.
The need for transportation that actually increased.
Oh, wow. So the demand was still there.
Oh, yeah. The demand was growing.
Interesting.
But the railroads, they didn't adapt to fulfill that broader need.
They got stuck in their ways.
They got stuck.
Happens.
They were so focused on their existing infrastructure and the way they'd always done things.
I see where this is going.
They missed the shift.
Yeah.
You could even say they were too focused on those steel tracks to see the highways and the skies opening up.
They didn't see the bigger picture,
Right.
the changing landscape.
Exactly. And cars, trucks, and airplanes.
Right.
They stepped in
Filled the gap.
to meet that need.
Took advantage of the new opportunities.
Essentially leaving the railroads behind in a lot of ways.
Fascinating how a whole industry can be disrupted like that.
It's a powerful lesson in how a narrow definition of your industry can really blind you to these massive opportunities that are passing you by.
That's a crucial takeaway,
Yeah.
for sure.
So let's move on to another example.
Okay.
Hollywood.
Hollywood, yes, another prime example.
Another compelling example of this short-sightedness.
Okay. I'm interested to hear this one.
So Hollywood saw itself as being in the movie business.
Okay. Makes sense.
Again, very product-centered perspective.
Right. It's all about the films.
And when television emerged,
This is where it gets interesting.
they initially dismissed it.
Of course they did.
They saw it as a threat to their specific product.
Right. Because it was a different way to consume entertainment.
Exactly. Movies shown in theaters.
Yeah, the traditional way.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
If we connect this to the bigger picture for you,
I'm following along.
they were actually in the entertainment business.
Oh, I see.
Television wasn't a threat.
Right.
It was a new channel.
A new way to deliver.
A new way to deliver entertainment to a much wider audience.
It was an opportunity in disguise.
It was, and they certainly paid a price for that initial lack of vision.
Yeah, I bet they did.
Levitt talks about the significant reorganizations that happened.
Right.
Some companies even disappeared entirely.
Wow, that's a big impact.
And it wasn't television's fault.
No.
It was their own constricted understanding of what they did.
Their own myopia.
Exactly.
Interesting.
But here's where it gets really interesting for you.
Okay, what happened?
Hollywood's eventual recovery
Okay.
came from a surprising source.
This should be good.
New talent who
Ah.
had honed their skills in television.
Oh, the irony.
Right.
The very thing they dismissed.
So the medium they initially rejected ended up revitalizing them.
It's like they came full circle.
You did. It makes you wonder.
Yeah.
Had Hollywood adopted a customer-oriented perspective from the get-go,
Right from the beginning.
focusing on providing entertainment in whatever form was viable,
Meeting the customer where they were.
could they have avoided that period of significant struggle?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is, and Levitt definitely seems to suggest so.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It really underscores the high cost of myopia
The price you pay for being short-sighted.
and the potential rewards of a broader customer-focused perspective.
It's a powerful lesson for any industry.
It really is, but it's not all cautionary tales, right?
Right.
Levitt gives us some examples of companies that got it right.
Okay, I like those examples.
Yeah, let's look at DuPont and Corning Glass Works.
Oh, yeah, big names.
These are those counterexamples
No,
that really highlight the power of a customer-centric approach.
I'm all ears.
So Levitt acknowledges their strong technical abilities
Right. They were known for innovation.
and their product focus.
They made quality products.
But he argues that this alone wasn't the key to their enduring success.
So there was something more.
There was, and here's a key insight,
Right?
they were also deeply customer-oriented. So they didn't just focus on what they were good at.
Right. It wasn't just about the product itself.
They also considered the needs of their customers.
Exactly. And what's so insightful is how they consistently sought out new ways to apply their technical expertise
Oh,
to create products that met customer needs.
interesting. So they were proactive.
It wasn't just about the initial invention, like nylon for
It's a
DuPont
groundbreaking product.
or a specific type of glass for Corning.
Yeah, their specialty.
It was about continuously asking themselves,
Okay.
how can our knowledge solve problems for people?
That's a great question to ask.
It is a great question.
And it keeps you focused on the customer,
And what new applications can we discover or create?
not just resting on their laurels.
No, not at all. This dedication to the customer fueled their ongoing innovation
It makes sense.
and their market growth.
It's like a virtuous cycle.
It really is.
Focusing on the customer leads to more innovation, which leads to more growth. Exactly. And you know what? It wasn't just about reacting to existing demands either.
Oh, so they were thinking ahead.
Levitt also highlights the aluminum industry.
Yeah.
With companies like Kaiser and Reynolds.
Big players.
And they didn't just wait around for increased demand for aluminum.
Interesting.
They proactively set about inventing new customer-satisfying uses for it.
So they created the demand themselves.
Yeah, in a way, yes. And that proactive stance is so vital.
It's not enough to just sit back and wait.
They understood that to expand the market,
Mm-hmm.
they needed to identify potential customer needs,
Right.
even those that weren't fully realized yet,
Anticipating future needs.
and then develop aluminum applications to address those needs.
It's brilliant.
This kind of market creation is a hallmark of true customer orientation.
It's like they were shaping the future.
And all of this leads to what Levitt calls the error of analysis.
Okay, tell me about that.
This is a central takeaway for you.
Right.
Levitt argues that defining an industry or a product too narrowly almost guarantees eventual decline.
You're putting yourself in a box.
You are. And if your thinking is limited to selling one specific item, you're inherently limiting your vision
And your potential.
and your potential for growth.
Makes perfect sense.
This is where it becomes really clear.
Okay.
He stresses the need for broad thinking.
thinking outside the box.
It's not just railroads.
Right.
It's transportation.
It's a bigger picture.
It's not just movies. It's entertainment.
It's the underlying need.
This wider definition unlocks so many possibilities.
It opens up new horizons.
And it allows you to spot potential threats and opportunities,
which you might otherwise miss.
that a narrower focus would obscure.
So it's essential for both survival and thriving.
Exactly. It demands a shift in mindset,
A willingness to adapt.
a willingness to look beyond the immediate product
Yeah.
and understand the fundamental need you're fulfilling for the customer.
That's the core of it.
And this brings us to Levitt's 4 myths.
Oh, yes. The myths.
These perilous beliefs
Okay.
that can lead to marketing myopia.
I'm ready to debunk them.
Let's start with the first one.
Go.
The notion that population growth guarantees growth.
More people, more customers.
That's the thinking, but
But it's not that simple.
it's not that simple. Many industries fall into this trap.
Yeah, it's easy to get complacent.
The logic goes more people equals more customers, so we don't need to make any significant changes.
But that ignores the importance of innovation.
It does, and Levitt cautions that relying solely on an expanding population stifles innovative thinking
Right. It makes you lazy.
about how to expand the market itself and better serve those people.
You're not challenging yourself to grow.
He uses the petroleum industry, which seems like a long-established growth industry, as an example.
Okay. Interesting choice.
Even with all the current optimism, he suggests it might be facing decline.
Oh, that's a bold statement.
And here's a question for you to consider.
All right, I'm thinking.
Since Rockefeller's introduction of kerosene lamps, have there been any truly groundbreaking demand-generating innovations within the oil industry itself?
That's a good question.
Most of their efforts have been centered on refining existing products,
Right. Making them better or more efficient.
rather than fundamentally broadening the market by addressing wider energy needs.
They haven't really moved beyond their core product.
Which leads us to the second myth,
Okay.
the conviction that there's no competitive substitute for the industry's primary product.
We're the only game in town myth.
And this one feels especially relevant for you today.
Oh, I can see why.
In our rapidly evolving world,
Things change so quickly now.
the danger here lies in assuming that your core offering is indispensable.
That you're irreplaceable.
And Levitt again uses the petroleum industry to illustrate this,
Okay.
pointing out how kerosene was replaced by electric light,
Yeah, that was a major shift.
and heating oil faced competition from natural gas.
Another big change.
What's crucial for you to understand
Okay, I'm paying attention.
is that these disruptions
Yeah.
often originate from outside the established industry.
Not from within.
They're driven by innovations that better satisfy customer needs.
So it's not just about competition. It's about finding better solutions.
Exactly. And Levitt makes this really insightful point about the oil companies and natural gas.
Go on.
They actually owned the resource,
Oh, wow.
and they possessed the relevant technical expertise.
They had everything they needed.
But they largely failed to capitalize on the natural gas revolution
Why is that?
because their focus was so intensely on oil
Oh, they were blinded by their main product.
as their main product.
That's incredible.
It's a stark reminder that even with the necessary resources, a limited perspective can cause you to miss enormous opportunities.
It's a cautionary tale for sure.
It highlights the danger of what Levitt calls product provincialism,
Product provincialism.
being so attached to your current offering
Right.
that you fail to recognize or embrace alternatives that might actually better serve your customers' fundamental needs.
So it's about being open to new possibilities.
Absolutely. And this leads us to the third myth,
Okay, what's number 3?
the idea that mass production protects you.
Ah, yes. The allure of efficiency.
The pursuit of efficiency and low unit cost
The tempting.
can be incredibly tempting.
Hard to resist.
But Levitt warns that this preoccupation with production can actually overshadow marketing
Interesting.
and, crucially, customer needs.
So you get so focused on making things?
Yeah, you lose sight of the people you're making them for.
That's a dangerous trap.
The focus shifts to selling what you produce
Okay.
rather than producing what customers actually desire.
You're pushing products instead of pulling customers.
Exactly. And this distinction between selling and marketing is fundamental.
I'm ready to learn.
Selling is about the seller's need to convert products into cash.
Okay. That's pretty straightforward.
Marketing, on the other hand, is about understanding and fulfilling the buyer's needs.
It's a different mindset.
And Levitt uses the automobile industry as a prime example
Okay, I'm listening.
of product orientation prevailing over customer wants.
Interesting.
He points out their slow recognition of the demand for compact cars.
Right when everyone wanted bigger cars.
Even though market research
Yeah.
was often confined to existing product categories.
You weren't looking beyond what they already had.
Exactly. And he draws a fascinating contrast with Henry Ford's philosophy.
Oh, Henry Ford, the master of mass production.
Right. We often associate his genius with mass production.
Yeah, the assembly line.
But Levitt argues that his true brilliance lay in marketing.
Really?
Ford's initial focus was on making cars affordable for millions of people.
Okay, so it started with the customer.
And then he developed the production system to meet that price point.
Interesting. So mass production was a means to an end.
It was a consequence of his customer-centric vision.
Not the driver of it.
Not the primary driver, no.
So he flipped the script.
He did. Instead of calculating costs and then setting a price, he established a price based on what he believed the market could bear.
Okay.
And then he compelled efficiency in production to meet that price.
Wow. That's a bold move.
It's a powerful illustration of prioritizing the customer.
Putting the customer first.
And this brings us to the fourth and final myth.
All right, bring it on.
The belief that technical R&D guarantees growth.
So just innovating your way to success?
Right. This one might seem counterintuitive.
Yeah, especially in today's world.
Especially in our technology-driven world.
Where everyone's talking about AI and the metaverse.
But Levitt cautions against being solely fixated on product innovation and R&D.
Interesting.
Potentially at the expense of truly understanding and meeting customer needs.
So you can be too focused on the technology.
You can, just because you can engineer something remarkable,
Right.
doesn't automatically mean that people will want it.
It has to solve a problem.
Or that it addresses their core needs effectively.
It has to have value for the customer.
He cites the electronics industry as an example, where early success based on technological superiority and military contracts might foster a product-oriented mindset.
Yeah, you get used to building what you're told to build.
And he revisits the oil industry again, noting their significant investments in production and refining technologies compared to their limited exploration of alternative energy sources.
They weren't looking beyond their core business.
Like fuel cells, batteries, solar power.
All the new exciting stuff.
The emphasis is often on the properties of the raw material rather than deeply investigating fundamental human needs.
They weren't thinking about the bigger picture.
So all of these myths underscore the danger of looking inward at your product or your capabilities, rather than outward at your customers and their evolving needs.
You got to keep your eyes on the prize.
This leads to a really pivotal point that Levitt makes.
Okay, I'm ready for it.
The very definition of an industry.
How do you define an industry?
Levitt posits that an industry isn't a goods-producing process, but a customer-satisfying process.
That's a big shift in perspective.
It means you begin not with your product or your raw materials, but with the customer and their needs.
The customer comes first.
Everything else from product development to sourcing follows from that central focus.
It's a whole different way of thinking.
It's about understanding the job.
The job to be done.
That your customer is trying to accomplish. And figuring out the best way to help them do it.
Regardless of the product.
Regardless of whether your current product is the only solution or even the optimal one.
So you're not limited by your existing offerings.
And to make this customer-centric view a reality, Levitt emphasizes the crucial role of leadership.
Of course, leadership sets the tone.
He stresses the necessity of a strong leader with a clear vision of creating and satisfying customers.
Someone who gets it.
And this isn't just a marketing department's concern.
It has to be company-wide.
It needs to be ingrained throughout the entire organization.
It's a cultural shift.
The company needs to view itself as buying customers. As doing whatever it takes to earn and retain their business.
Not just selling products.
Rather than simply pushing out products or services.
It's a relationship, not a transaction.
So for you, our listener, the key takeaways are pretty clear.
Yeah, let's recap.
It all boils down to cultivating that customer-oriented mindset.
Putting the customer at the center.
You need to be constantly thinking about your customer's needs. Recognizing that those needs change.
They're not static.
And being prepared to adapt and innovate.
To stay ahead of the curve.
To meet them.
Absolutely.
Even if it means venturing beyond your traditional products. Or industry boundaries.
Breaking down those silos.
Avoiding that product myopia is absolutely crucial for long-term success.
In any field.
In any endeavor.
It's a timeless principle.
And it's not just about making small improvements. It's about understanding that fundamental task your customer is hiring you to do.
The job to be done.
and being receptive to entirely new ways of accomplishing that task.
Challenging the status quo.
It requires a willingness to challenge your own assumptions.
Stepping outside your comfort zone.
And to see your business from the customer's vantage point.
Walking in their shoes.
So for you, our listener, here's a final thought to really ponder.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Think about an industry you know well.
Right.
Is it genuinely customer-oriented? Or is it maybe clinging to a narrow definition of its product?
Stuck in the past.
Could it be overlooking evolving needs or potential disruptions just over the horizon?
That's a good question to ask.
What's the transportation or the entertainment equivalent of that industry?
What's the bigger picture?
Understanding marketing myopia is just the starting point.
The first step on a longer journey.
Delving deeper into the principles of customer centricity and strategic thinking will be so valuable.
I agree.
As you navigate the ever-changing landscape of business and beyond.
It's about building organizations and approaches that are resilient, adaptable, and truly dedicated to creating value for their customers.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
That's what it's all about in the end.
That's it for today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
It was a great discussion.
Until next time.
Keep those customer needs in mind.
Absolutely.
And avoid that marketing myopia.
Will do.
See you later.
See you later.